Hello, Michael Kahn here, teaching you about the Old Testament and its deceptions and how it's affected the planet as well as the New Testament. The Old Testament can be defined as by serving God, you win wars, acquire wealth, and get slaves, also known as employees. Now, in the Old Testament, remember Moses wrote the first 5 books. Moses was an Egyptian prince. Now, I don't believe there ever was an Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the rest. I believe Moses concocted that to give himself validation and make stories. Kemet schools and mystery schools, the Eleusinian mystery schools, taught by allegory. And that's where Moses got his way of teaching, by making up stories. And stories can be misinterpreted. They can bend the truth to give wrong values and mindsets because they're not factual. They're stories. And they teach things that do not make sense well and be misinterpreted and make all kinds of wrong things with the allegory behind it to back it up. And the allegory is a lie. It's not a factual story. It's not a factual event. This is done intentionally to mind screw us all. Now, Moses, an Egyptian prince, told us that Abraham was told by God to murder his child. It was a good thing to be willing to murder your own child, your only child, because God told you to. Tower of Babel, and that's where we got all different languages. Believe that? The Red Sea parting. Do you believe that? And Noah's Ark. God kills off almost all humanity, almost all the innocent animals. Kills them all off in a flood, which, by the way, covers the mountains. By the way, the water covering mountains dries up in a month and a half. Very likely, very true, But he kills off all the animals. Then he says, oh, wait a minute, I made a mistake. Mankind is evil. I can't change that. I repent. I'll make up for that. I'll give him a rainbow. Same thing won't happen again. So God destroys almost all humanity, almost every animal on the planet. Kills them all. But it's okay because he made a rainbow. That makes it all okay. And God is perfect, we know that, because he says so. Now, the Old Testament taught the Hebrews, and the Hebrews, by the way, were black people. In the book of Revelation, in the first, second chapters, it says that Jesus had hair like wool and feet like bronze. In the Song of Solomon, in the first chapter, the woman who represents Israel, the people, says that her skin is dark from working in the fields. Sounds like black people to me, especially slaves in Egypt. And if you go back to Egypt, look at all the sculptures they had of their people from way back when. They had Negro features. Their faces were Negro faces. They had strong bodies like black men do today. They were Africans. Egypt was an African nation. They were dark-skinned. They were black, not this blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus you see everywhere. Of course, the black churches have a black Jesus. The whites go there and see this picture and say, oh, it's race-oriented. The blacks don't want their Jesus to be black, but they don't have to feel they need to have the proof to prove that Jesus is white and blonde. They don't have to prove that, do they? And the original Hebrews were black people. Now they're white. The people in Israel now called Jews, they're not Hebrews, they call themselves Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews, like I'm an Ashkenazi Jew, but we're not the original Hebrews, those were black people. We are ancient Turks, Khazars, who joined the Hebrew faith and for ulterior motives, for selfish ambition motives, the ancient Turks. So understand, it's all about lying and deception. But let's go into the Old Testament. According to the Bible, to Moses, who wrote the first 5 books, God told the Hebrews to kill whole nations. Not just the men, but also the women, the children, everything. But first, let me go and tell you something about first. That God was worshipped as a god of war by the early Hebrews. Get a pen and paper and write this down. 1 Samuel chapter 4, verses 3 to 8. Leviticus chapter 26, verses 3 to 8. Numbers chapter 21, verses 2 and 3. And finally, Psalm chapter 144, verses 1 and 2. These are basically scriptures proving that God is worshipped as a God of war. Not peace, not love, a God of war to be feared. Now, let's go into about the times that God commands the Hebrews to kill every last child, woman, and even the animals of some nations. Okay, let's go to, here it is, 1 Samuel 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 2 and 3. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I have noted what Amalek did to Israel in opposing them on the way when they came out of Egypt. Now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. Now let's go to Numbers chapter 31, the first couple of verses. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Avenge the people of Israel on the Midianites. Afterward you shall be gathered to your people. So Moses spoke to the people, saying, Arm men from among you for war, that they go against Midian to execute the Lord's vengeance in Midian. Deuteronomy chapter 7, first couple of verses. When the Lord your God brings you into the land that you are entering to take possession of it, and clears away many nations before you, the Hittites, the Girgazites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations more numerous and mightier than you, and when the Lord your God gives them over to you, and you defeat them, then you must devote them to complete destruction. You shall make no covenant with them, and show no mercy to them. Now, this is the same God. This is the good, loving God that Jesus is supposed to be. It's supposedly the same God. And notice, this is especially important, the Christian pastors align with the Jew and Israel, but not the Muslims. We have killed off the Muslims according to the propaganda of our pastors, because that is their agenda for the Vatican. I'll tell you more about that later. But for right now, let us go now into how, let's go to how the New Testament was formed, or how it transitioned. There's some, listen to this, in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 29 says, Besides, the eternal God of Israel is not a human being. He doesn't tell lies or change his mind. So God is the same. Oh, and it says in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. So God doesn't change his mind, doesn't lie, always the same. But in the Old Testament, kill everybody. All your enemies killed. Hate your enemy. Kill your enemy. In the New Testament, love your enemy. Pray for those who persecute you. Return good for evil. But God doesn't lie. In the book of Jeremiah, there's a scripture saying that there will be a new covenant with Israel. That they broke the old covenant, there be a new covenant, that basically that everybody would know the Lord and wouldn't teach anybody that, because everybody would know him in their heart. I don't see that happening. I still see people saying know the Lord and teach people about Jesus. They said that the Christianity is the new covenant talked about in Jeremiah. Bull dinkies. That's a crop of baloney. It's bullshit. The Bible, the Old Testament and New Testament are totally different books. And they are basically whole different mindsets. And basically we'll learn why. That the Old Testament, by following God, you win wars, get wealth, and acquire slaves, and obey this God. Obeying this God, the prophets of God, does that not make you a little manipulative on who to fight and kill for the prophets of God to tell you to? And in the New Testament, you'll see how being a good slave also serves their purposes in this new world that we're in. Signing out now. The next lesson will be on control of you, making you good slaves. Signing out. Michael Kahn, TruthForceInternational.org. Angry, loud, and clear truth. And in this book, you want to get down The Untold Nature of Christianity. Lousy $3 on Amazon. Go buy it.